Live.
Okay, we're connected.
It's always nice to kind of let it sit for a second anyway, so some people can sign on.
We're connected.
Okay, sounds good. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum, everybody, to the CAIR family and folks that are tuning in on Facebook, elsewhere on YouTube from around the world. This is the Daily Dose CAIR COVID Conversations with CAIR. We run this show on a regular basis. For those who have not tuned in yet, this is a platform that we've been running since mid-March or so that we can bring you together and sort of provide a platform, a space, a voice where you can bring us your stories, your issues, and we can also share with you some of the things that are happening around the world. How you doing, Ayan?
Alhamdulillah, Abbas, how about you?
I'm doing well. I do want to take a second and apologize both to my fellow guests and to all of the viewers. What you see before you is the result of a COVID situation where I had to give myself a haircut. Okay, and for somebody who's never given themselves a haircut before, this can be a very dangerous and trying situation. And you think you're doing a good job, and then you see yourself in the mirror, and then it's just too hard to fix it. And I'm not really comfortable going out to the barber shop yet, even though Georgia was the first place to open up salons. And so, again, my apologies.
Abbas, I don't notice anything weird. You didn't.
No, are you sure? No, it's a mess. It's a real mess. Alhamdulillah for Zoom cameras and whatnot. But everybody doing well in your world, Ayan? Everybody safe, healthy these days?
Alhamdulillah, we're not really in a big city area, so there's not a lot of noise around here. It's still like with everything happening in the world right now, I don't think we're really connected to that just because of the circumstances and where we are.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do want to say something about that for everyone that's like going out and protesting, like alhamdulillah, like it's really good that y'all are being a part of this and being active. But if you are doing that, check out our episode from last week where we talked about know your rights as a protester, because with everything that's going on out there, it's really important for, if you are gonna go out, just know so you're not taken advantage of, like know what you're getting into, know your rights as a protester. So check that out. Yeah. I'm also going to put in the link. We have posters. We have links to posters that you can take with you to the protest. So I'm going to put the link in the comments.
I'm also going to, I'm sorry to be on my phone here. I'm going to try to share our viewing right now on the, on my personal Facebook page and tag some people. It's an important conversation today, but no, thank you for bringing up the fact that we have protests. We have posters, know your rights guides. We have a history about this show, discussing the know your rights when you're going out there to protest, but also encouraging folks, if you want to go out there and protest, but make sure that you take care of yourself and that you are taking care of your family. And so make sure that you are not a vulnerable person, that you don't have health risks, kind of underlying conditions that might put you or your family in jeopardy. And if you do, just follow the utmost safety, inshallah, as much as possible, so that we can ensure that that we're still around and that we're healthy enough to fight this fight as we go through, inshallah. So with that, it's an important reminder. I do want to say, I personally am quite excited about the political moment that we're in. And even though today's show is not about what's unfolding on the streets, since we've been talking about that mostly for the last 2 weeks, I do want to say that I'm quite impressed. I'm quite encouraged and excited to see where this moment takes us as a country and as a community, to see where we're going, despite all the differences of opinion on strategies and tactics that might be out there right now. I'm really excited to see what direction we go in with all of this. And I would just encourage everybody that's following the news on a regular basis, let's make sure that we're following the news with sincerity, we're educating ourselves, we're learning as we're going, and that we're as supportive and positive as we can be during this time. So inshallah khair.
Also, I want to mention someone said something recently that stood out to me. They said, because a lot of people kind of want to get back to that normalcy, like how life was before quarantine, before everything. And someone said, I don't want to go back to normalcy if it's the white supremacist life that we were living before. I think that's very fair. More than fair.
Yeah, sure thing. I mean, if you really think about what this has brought together, I mean, what we have, this is amazing consciousness right now about the fact that life wasn't okay. The pandemic stopped us and made us think and made us realize what's going on. We've had a chance to reflect on ourselves, as our community, our nation, and understand what's going on. And as soon as this thing hit, we realized 1 or 2 weeks in that the most vulnerable people in our communities, in our neighborhoods, were really being taken advantage of because they weren't prepared. They didn't have the resources to support them during the COVID crisis. So whether you were Black, brown, poor, lower income, working class, your vulnerability is simply, tripled and quadrupled during this time. And so what we're really seeing, I think, is part of a continuing conversation. Anybody who tries to bracket this discussion about it's only about race, or it's only about police, or it's only about healthcare. No, it's not. We have a problem. And so inshallah, we'll be able to address these together collectively. So alhamdulillah, and I look forward to being able to have more of these conversations as we continue and hear from you. Again, a note to the audience members, if there is anything at all ever that you guys would like us to address, if there are recommended speakers, book talks, titles, subject areas, formats, platforms, whatever it is that you'd like us to bring to your table, this is your platform. So please do get in touch with us. You can leave comments on Facebook. You can send us Facebook Messenger. You can reach us by email. You can reach us on Instagram. CAIR, as you know, is pretty easy to get in touch with. If you don't want to get in touch with us, your national office, about 35 offices around the country that you can get in touch with. So please, please don't be a stranger. We're here to serve you. Please do be in touch, inshallah. So Ayan, can you tell us a little bit about our guest today?
Okay, so today we're talking about a situation that happened at a community college in Arizona, an Islamophobic quiz. I think last time we briefly brought this up, I showed the TikTok that kind of made this go viral. Today we're bringing on Ahmed. He's the Civil Rights Director and Staff Attorney for CAIR-Arizona. He graduated from Paul M. Herbert Law Center at Louisiana State University. So I'm going to bring him on right now so he can talk to us a little about the situation. Assalamu alaikum, Ahmed.
Assalamu alaikum, Ahmed.
You're muted.
Hi, you guys hear me now?
Yeah, you're good.
Alhamdulillah.
So how are you, Ahmed?
I'm good. I'm excited to talk to you guys today.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about the situation that happened, this incident? Sure.
So like you all, I saw the viral TikTok, and when I saw that happen at Scottsdale Community College, I was alerted. This is happening in our backyard, and we got in contact with the student. He reached out to us, and at first the TikTok video only shows 3 questions. So we started talking about the 3 questions, but we soon realized that this was bigger than just this quiz and 3 questions, that the entire lesson plan was about Islamic terrorism. Basically, this professor tells his students that Islam mandates the killing of non-Muslims. It mandates Muslims to do this. And when we saw that, everything just stopped, and we said, this is something that we need to take action on.
Mm-hmm. What was CAIR's response?
So initially, we wanted to investigate the whole module. This is just 1 lesson out of 6.
Yeah.
And when we first interviewed the student, the school actually the day after put out an apology saying that those 3 questions were not appropriate and they're not representative of their diversity at Scottsdale Community College. However, I was a little disappointed because they said they went through an investigation, but they only mentioned the 3 questions. This professor's lesson plan is made up of 3 different things. The first one is a PowerPoint slide that he creates. And this PowerPoint.
I'm gonna pull this up right now as you're talking about it. I actually have it.
So this PowerPoint slide is horrendous. I mean, there are not only quotes that says that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was the first terrorist in Islam, but it says that Muslims are mandated to kill non-Muslims. What this teacher does that goes beyond any type of argument of academic freedom is it's basically indoctrination. He's teaching it as like a Sunday school person teaching scripture. He says this is what the Quran and the Hadith say, and this is a unanimous position, and any argument that Islam teaches peace is false. It's not supportive of the document. So when we saw that and we saw Scottsdale's response, we immediately were very worried that this was just going to try to be blown away. The professor actually went on to a right-wing podcast a couple days after to say, the school said he was supposed to apologize. He said he had no intention of apologizing because this is the stuff that he teaches and this is the stuff he believes. He actually doubled down and tried to say that what he's teaching is true, that somehow the 1.8 billion Muslims in the world have this mandate. And when we heard this type of rhetoric, we wanted to make sure that we uphold our constitutional values, and we brought suit. And once we actually filed suit, there were articles saying that we were trying to be bullies. However, I don't say that upholding the Constitution is being a bully. We just want to make sure that as Muslims, we have the same rights as everyone else, equal protection under the law.
No, absolutely. No, thank you for that. And I think, I don't know if enough viewers sort of followed the case or they saw the case, but just as a recap, we're out in Scottsdale Community College. Is that right? Scottsdale Community College. We've got a normal college class here, and the professor's making somebody answer in a very particular way over his interpretation of what Islam says. And so this becomes a little bit of a complicated situation because of some of the boundaries of how religion is taught in public schools and in university settings. I have some experience, obviously, doing that, being a religious studies scholar and a professor, having been a professor of religious studies. So we get into these debates, and it's been around for a while. And I'll say that the landmark case, I believe it was in 1976, I just forget the name of the case at the moment, that allowed for religion to be taught both in public schools and in university settings, made a very clear distinction. It was a very easy distinction. It said, you can teach about religion, you just cannot teach religion. So you cannot favor or demand or insist upon one particular interpretation of religion, but you can teach about it all day. So you can teach about every different kind of interpretation. You can teach about just about any religion that you want to. You can engage deeply in the text. You can really get very close to understanding what this religious culture is all about, but you cannot teach what it actually says as the definitive thing. That then crosses the line into theology. And once you cross the line into theology, you're no longer really operating. And so I'd love to be able to get into some examples of that a little bit later. But I wanted to take a step back, Ahmed, if you don't mind, and ask you or to think about, or others, Ayan, I'd love to hear you, discuss this. It's kind of amazing to think about how this came together through a TikTok video, right? And to just think about sort of, what world do we live in right now that we have a First Amendment case that is potentially very, very compelling and has national implications, that it came from a TikTok video. So I don't know, just some reflections on that. Ayan, you're the one who found the video, right?
We actually I found it in two ways, right? Like my brother showed it to me. He said, CAIR needs to do something about this. And then on our Twitter, someone sent us maybe a screenshot from it. And they said, can y'all do something? And we see this happening in a lot of the cases that we talk about. A lot of it is through just people uploading things. And some of it is questionable. It's that sometimes it's actually the person someone posting like a racist incident that they're proud of, and then everyone the community comes and attacks that. So I think like the world that we live in, it's very easy to access these situations now, and it's so easy for people to mobilize and organize when they see like something questionable.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Ahmed, did you also learn about it through social media, or did your guys' offices get contacted immediately?
Well, being in the West Coast, we saw all the emails from National right away talking about this TikTok, and we got with the student right away. It's actually funny that we talk about the social media pressure, because that's one of the reasons why we were able to find this case. But one of the things that makes me disappointed is the response from the district. It feels like they only investigated those 3 questions, and if this was maybe another faith, or if they actually went to a detailed investigation, they would see that this intro to politics class, this isn't some advanced Islamic studies class. This is political science 120, was going into telling people that Islam mandates this and any other interpretation is false. And if you, I'm pretty positive that if this was another faith and a teacher were to say something like that, the district would have a different response. But we're taking action, and we want to make sure to hold them accountable.
And we want to make sure, again, people get that. So when you first registered this and this first became a public issue, the university itself apologized, correct?
They apologized for the 3 questions, and then
the district.
Exactly.
And in the meantime, and this is very important for people to realize, and this is why our social media engagement matters. This is why our local voice matters. In the meantime, as this started gaining prominence, the right-wing media in Arizona, nationally, the network of people that are known to be sort of the Islamophobes. For folks who don't know, Arizona is a kind of hotbed. This is one of their sort of strongholds out there, and they get away with some really outlandish kind of rhetoric. And so poor thing, one of the sisters that was running for Congress there last year got blasted, constantly. And so it was almost too perfect for them. So they're the ones who increased the public pressure, which then forced the district to sort of retract or override the college's statement. And so again, just a message to people, don't think that your activism doesn't matter. Your activism truly, truly matters. Speaking up even amongst your friends, making a TikTok video, just spreading the word, whether it's CAIR or anybody else, there is got to be an absolute zero tolerance policy out there for Islamophobia and anti-Muslim bigotry. And so I would really make the case that public pressure that the conservative establishment, I don't even want to call them conservatives, because conservatives, can be perfectly fine folks, and then there's no reason a conservative can't be an ally and friend to us. But this sort of right-wing Islamophobic activity, these folks, they mobilize, they work on their media, they work on public pressure, and it's because of that they were able to sort of, protect this professor in the meantime. So, do we have examples of the test itself?
Yeah, I can pull up the test. And while we're doing that, Ahmed, can you tell us what the goal of the lawsuit is? Like, what is the plaintiff seeking?
So we're seeking 3 things. The first thing is to make sure we remedy the damage that has already been done. The second thing is we want the court to declare that this violates the First Amendment. And the last thing is we want an injunction to stop this type of module being taught in the future. We're not trying to stop him from teaching his whole course. We're not even trying to stop him from teaching about Islam in general. There's no argument at all. I will defend his First Amendment right to talk about why terrorists may use Islam to justify what they do. However, what he does is saying, this is what Islam is. This is what Islam teaches. Any other position goes against Islam. And that's where, as the boss said, he's teaching theology. He's not teaching why terrorists might try to justify their actions. That 100% he has the right to. What he did is against it. So we're trying to enjoin him from teaching this specific rhetoric, basically, this Sunday school theology. That's what we're trying to stop.
Can you explain to the audience why this is a First Amendment violation?
Sure. So under the First Amendment, there is the Establishment Clause, which states that the government cannot establish religion. Basically, they cannot approve of religion or disapprove. So if this professor were to teach that Christianity was the only religion, everything else was false, it is the religion of Scottsdale Community College, he'd be approving of religion, and that'd be a violation. Or if he were to say that Christianity is wrong, it's false, I hate Christians, something like that, that would disapprove of religion. Here, he's saying that Islam mandates its followers to kill non-Muslims. And the test under the Establishment Clause is, what would a reasonable observer see the primary effect of the message be? And when you look at this course, there's only 3 things. There's the PowerPoint, or when you look at this module, there's the PowerPoint, there's the quiz, and then there's the assigned readings. The PowerPoints lay out that the 2 primary sources of Islam, the Quran and the Hadith, say that Muslims have this mandate to kill non-Muslims. That any other interpretation goes against the actual examples in scriptures. I've said it multiple times. The reading reinforced this message to say any other belief that Islam can be peaceful is false. And then you see the quiz questions with the questions such as who do terrorists believe? Who do they follow their actions? Does it square in the Quran? Does Islam say to commit terrorism? So all these three things reinforce the same message, and a reasonable observer, no question, would say that, well, you're telling me that Muslims are dangerous. And that's one of the things we want to stress. This teacher is teaching the same hateful rhetoric that you see that led to the Christchurch shooting in New Zealand. This teacher is putting Muslim students at risk, their lives, by telling their other students that in an intro to politics class, that, hey, your Muslim student, your Muslim classmates are dangerous. And in Arizona, we want to make sure to protect the Muslim students' lives. So that's the establishment clause. The other part is the free exercise clause, which states that the government cannot stop you from practicing your religion unless they have a very important reason to do so. And as this quiz, sometimes you get free exercise clause, especially in an Islam way, where a student might say, I don't want to learn about Islam, and making me talk about Islam goes against my religion. And that's not what we're saying at all here. Here, this teacher is forcing the student to disavow his religion by saying it preaches terrorism and this is the only interpretation. And if he doesn't want to answer the question as the professor believes correct, then he loses points. So that is a damage to the student. So it's the establishment clause and the free exercise clause.
There's also a question there that we brought up in conversation, Ahmed, I know, is the fact that the student, that's an interesting thing, but the student is being compelled to answer in a particular way that would violate their own religious beliefs.
That's the free exercise clause.
Okay. So for the viewers, everybody just says First Amendment, free speech, and people just kind of leave it at that. But it's actually, the First Amendment is quite complex. And so we have the establishment clause and the free exercise clause.
Under the umbrella of freedom of religion. So we have freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and under that freedom of religion. And one of the things that you brought up is you don't want to call it against conservatives, which I agree. One of the strongest proponents of religious freedoms are conservatives. So this isn't, take away Islam. Do you want this professor saying Christians mandate, them to kill their non-Christians? And the answer is no. That type of hate has no place, and it's unconstitutional.
Yeah, and I'm really excited that you guys are taking this case, and it's almost. When you look at it, it's this professor couldn't have made a more amateur religious studies mistake. And I'm going to say this now is obviously, I work for CAIR, and I'm in a CAIR capacity here, but I've been teaching religious studies, in the classroom in university settings since 2002, right after 9/11. And the number one subject is, obviously the subject that's always coming up is the context of international conflict, what some people want to call terrorism, okay? Non-armed, non-state actors, non-state militant groups, what people want to call terrorist organizations that are religiously, cloaked in religious language and religiously motivated. How do we discuss that issue? We deal with this. It's one of the courses that I used to teach. And so we deal with this in every single religious tradition. I literally have hundreds of students a semester when I was teaching, survey Buddhist extremists that use Buddhist texts to justify their killings. It's not our place as professors, and I'm just going to kind of put my professor hat there. It's not our place ever to describe what a religion teaches. We are trained in the guild of academia to make sure that we present debates and we present people the tools and skills necessary to navigate very complex questions in complex subject areas. So even as a practicing Muslim, somebody who is known publicly in my networks to be part of the Muslim community, it meant the world to me that by the end of my semester, most students still didn't know if I was a Muslim or not. Most people didn't know because I would present things in such a way that were so objective, so neutral, and allowed people to really walk through the stuff themselves. In fact, I usually had to push back against my liberal friends, okay, who would say, oh, jihad doesn't mean armed conflict or warfare. Well, no, it does, okay, in XYZ context. People wanted to say, Islam only means peace. Well, it does in XYZ context. And so that context factor is very, very easy to accomplish. And the fact that this professor was so reckless about approaching that way makes a very important, compelling case. And even more so, the fact that his test lines up directly with talking points of organizations. Don't take our word for it. Take a whole stack of other people. Georgetown University, Southern Poverty Law Center. These organizations that spew these talking points are hate groups. Okay, they might be, for the time being, IRS eligible as 501c3s, but they're hate mongers, hate groups, bigots. And so his test lines up perfectly with them. And then he goes on their podcasts to talk about it. Come on, man. Do yourself a favor. So, this has been a really interesting case, and I'm very, very happy that you guys are taking it up. Go ahead, Aya.
Abbas and Ahmed, either of y'all can talk about this, but how does tenure play into this? Because that was a question that we got on our Facebook page right now. As a tenured professor, does that affect what he can say in the classroom? This is actually something happened at, I'm from North Carolina, so I'm bringing up UNCW. I don't know how much national coverage this has gotten, but there's a professor at UNCW that on his tweets were exposed that he's been saying things, and he's very non-caring because he's I'm tenured, I can say whatever I want. So I'm just curious how much that can play into it.
Let me jump in real quick, Abbas. I know you're the professor, so I'm
no, you go ahead.
But one thing I want to, and I'm happy you brought up that example, Ian, because that's the difference between our lawsuit and another lawsuit. What the professor wants to say in his private Twitter or on the campus or whatever, that he has that free speech. There's nothing that we're going to do to stop that. What we are going to stop is when, even if a tenured professor does, is when they make an unconstitutional mistake, like happened here. He taught a class, and as a government actor, he taught a module that disapproved of Islam, disapproved of religion, which violates the Establishment Clause. So if tenure or not, if someone's going to make an unconstitutional violation, they're going to be upheld to it. So if he wants, and if the professor wants to tweet stuff or say stuff in his private capacity, we're not challenging that. We're challenging the unconstitutional act of disapproving of religion as a government actor in the government space. But I'll defer to Abbas.
No, it's actually really important. Thank you, Ahmed, because there is so much publicity around it. And usually when a case like this enters into the public fray and there are impassioned opinions, and a lot of people in our own community might be mad about the very notion that somebody can use a phrase like Islamic terrorism. That's not what we're arguing, right? It's the issue. It's not about sort of rhetoric or what language to use or anything of that nature. It's about, the constitutionality of using a coercive system in a public school setting to establish a correct or incorrect interpretation of religion. So back to your question, Ayan, about tenure. So to begin with, sort of where Ahmed was going about the private personal capacity, typically it is the case that, let's say, even if you have an egregious, sort of an egregious opinion as an individual, if you're not tenured, it typically sort of hurts your chances on getting tenure. So non-tenured professors they really toe the line, and they're waiting about 5 or 6 years to get that hood right and to make sure that they're in, and then they can sort of, they can supposedly do and say a lot of things. But the truth is that, what happens outside of the classroom, what happens inside of the classroom really shouldn't be connected. But in a non-tenured scenario, that leeway is much less. There's a lot of sensitive politics in academia. And sort of having strong opinions outside of the classroom is just one of those areas. Now, when it comes to having tenure itself, really, it is a very, very protected institution, and I'm thankful that such an institution exists, because we do not want professors' opinions or their perspectives, their perspectives to be shaped by politics or public, or public reason or public speculation. Again, had this professor said 99.9% of Islamic terrorists believe XYZ, you really couldn't say anything, okay? But the fact is that you can't say that Islam teaches this. One could say the majority of Islamic doctrine teaches this, okay? Sure, say it, and then you can prove it if you want to. You don't even necessarily have to be factually, correct. I mean, you can't say something egregious, completely wrong, but you could have strong opinions on debates, but you cannot sort of act as if there's no debate, and you can't cross the line into theology there. So tenure, I don't believe, affords this professor any protection in this situation from a constitutional point of view, and for the case that we're looking at. It does provide him protection in the sense that there's an initial impulse or instinct to say he's a tenured professor, he can do whatever. So the university's default setting and academia's default setting will be like, don't tell us how to teach what we teach. We're tenured faculty, we have PhDs, we've been in these institutions 20 years. And I myself am very defensive over those kind of things. The last thing in the world you ever want is somebody to regulate the way that you teach your material. So that's going to be the initial impulse. And it's going to take quite a lot of work for people to do the education, the public education, to make sure that public opinion on this thing is well informed. This is not a free speech issue. And so I'm very, very happy to hear about CAIR-Arizona and their legal partners' approach to this very complex subject. And I look forward to seeing how it plays out. And of course, anything that we can do to continue to be of assistance, inshallah, we can be there. Do we have any other questions or anything like that, Ayan, coming in?
I was just going to leave it to Ahmed if you have any final thoughts. Thank you for joining us today. And if there's anything else, wrapping up, if you have anything to say.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. But I do have 2 points. The first one is that we actually partnered up with 2 other law firms here, the Price Law Group and R.M. Warner Law. And one of the attorneys for R.M. Warner Law, his name's Rais Muhammad, he's actually not only someone who does First Amendment speech defamation cases, but he's actually a professor at Arizona State University College of Law. So we actually have someone who has to deal with what can be said in the classroom. So that's someone who also says that what was said was unconstitutional. The second thing, and I do want to make it clear, there's no question that if this professor wants to teach why terrorists use Islam, of course. But what he cannot do is say that this is what Islam is. And the professor actually said he's been teaching for 24 years, this sort of material. And to me, as someone who sees this instantly, I think about, okay, how someone who doesn't know a Muslim maybe, because this is an online class, you don't actually see, Ahmed's taking this class or the sister with the hijab's taking this class. But for 24 years, this type of hateful rhetoric has been taught. How does it put Muslim lives at risk? And I don't want to see a Christ Church here in Arizona. So we're fighting this case very vigilantly because we want to make sure to uphold our constitutional values and make sure that this type of hate is not taught. So thank you guys so much. If you guys have anything, we're always here for you guys.
And I put the link to CAIR-Arizona's press release, and it describes all of this. It has information, links to the actual course content. So it's in the comment section if y'all want to check that out. And Ahmed, I didn't even realize that 24 years of teaching this course, that's horrifying. Like one person that this information has been given like class after class for 24 years. And
thank God for TikTok.
And all the people, everyone that went through the class, and now they're leaving with that, if they've never met a Muslim before, that is their understanding of Islam. So that TikTok video really revolutionized the classroom. Well,
send our best to everybody out there, Ahmed. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, Assalamu alaikum. All right, Ayan, thanks for co-hosting with me today.
Thank you, Abbas. Yeah, that was a really important conversation. I'm glad that you got to be a part of it because you really brought that perspective of like a professor, an academic perspective.
Yeah, I know this one totally hits close to home, and I know that you and I have had conversations about the way that Islam was taught. Even recently you graduated, and so you know what it's like to be in a classroom in these settings and these kind of politically charged times. And it is very important for us to recognize that there are debates about what's going on out there. It's not our place to tell people how to teach Islam. There might be things that we believe in and are dear to us as our religion, and we might not like the fact that ISIS exists or some terrorist organization exists, and that it uses Islamic language and that they believe as Muslims or they practice as Muslims. We might not like that. But we have to recognize that those are very intense debates, and that we're working through them as a community, and that there are resources to address these issues. But we can expect in a society like this that everybody be equal under the law, and that people not be coerced to believe something about their religion or any other religion against their will, or be coerced, through fear of penalty of a grade or something like this. And so alhamdulillah, this is a great case for us to be following and watching. Ayan, you forgot to ask Ahmed the final question, so I'm going to ask you. If you, Ayan Ajin,
I wasn't ready for this one.
If you, Ayan Ajin, had one billboard on a major state highway, what would your message to the world be?
The revolution is now.
She said it. The revolution is now, and it will be televised, it seems. So, Jazakallah khair. And if it does happen, we'll be sure to have it here on the Daily Dose at CAIR from Facebook /CAIR Live. Anyway, Jazakallah khair, Ayan, as always. And thank you again to all of our amazing viewers and community supporters. I have to send a special note for those of you who've been supporting us during this time of quarantine and Ramadan, where we normally do our fundraising. I have to say the CAIR community came hard. You guys supported. You guys have been very, very supportive. If you didn't donate, you can still donate. Check us out. Please continue to keep us alive and keep these causes alive. So Jazakallah khair. We'll see you soon, and we'll hear from you soon.